Hi, my name is Thais Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about some things you can expect during a reconciliation or reconnection between the fearful avoidant and anxious preoccupied attachment style individuals. So, I'm going to go through, I'm going to tell you about some of the different sort of deep dives in here that you can take. I do want you to know that it will be relationship specific. It's not necessarily going to be like a one size fits all situation. A lot of intricacies will apply. So, like how long you were in a relationship with somebody, how long ago the breakup was when you're trying to learn about these things, how invested you were. Do you have kids together? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have 20 years of history? Are you married? Or was it a 3-month relationship? There's going to be a big difference. So I'm just going to tell you like principles that apply to many different things. If you want to do a deep dive, we are releasing our course, How to Repair Any Relationship. And this applies to like family members, friendships, everything. It's extremely in depth. It talks about different attachment styles, the different things you need, the different love languages, the rebonding phase, what that looks like, how to navigate the power struggle, all the communication tools, how to deal with your primary and secondary trigger patterns, core wounds that come up, how to communicate through them, like literally everything. It's one of my favorite courses I've created so far. And that is coming out this month. So for April, it'll be out actually very soon. So that is there. And we have a 7-day free trial that we are launching from April 21st until May 5th. So you can check out the 7-day free trial, gain access, check things out, see if you love it. On the other side, I like over and over again, I will say like literally the school's content is 100 times better than 10 times, 100 times, I don't know, significantly better than the content here, just because I have more room and I can put steps and exercises and explain and like really go deeper into things and give you really powerful tools that you can really shift and do the reprogramming work around and communication tips and all these different things. So I highly recommend it, obviously. So check it out. And I will put a link in the description box below for all of that. Now, let's talk about some of the big principles that we'll see in terms of the anxious preoccupied and fearful avoidant in this phase of the relationship. So, and the phase being like you've broken up and now you're thinking about reconciling. Okay. So, first and foremost, often what happens is the fearful avoidant will be more guarded going into any form of reconciliation. Even if there was a breakup from their end, they still usually have this like deep belief that's often governing them. That's the I am unworthy core belief. And that means they're constantly feeling like they have to earn their worth, prove their worth. They can be obviously suspicious. They can feel like, oh, you probably did things during the breakup that I wouldn't be okay with. And they can really go into this dynamic guarded, honestly, no matter what stage of the relationship you broke up in. And no matter what the length was of the breakup, the length was of the relationship before it, you're going to get a fearful, avoidant, guarded pretty much no matter what. The anxious preoccupied is going to feel really afraid. And usually that fear of loss is really activated, right? It's like they've already lost somebody. So now it feels even more fragile. So now they can be even more hyper vigilant about abandonment in their own way at the beginning of some form of reconciliation. The anxious preoccupied usually wants an answer very quickly because there's a previously developed emotional bond because you've been together in the past. Usually it's like, well, we didn't answer now. Let's get back together right away. And oftentimes that will push the fearful avoidant away very quickly because all of those doubts and fears that they have that they usually haven't moved through emotionally yet by the time there's a reconciliation, if they haven't done the work around those things and they're not really working on themselves, then you're going to see that a lot of those fears are like really close to the surface of the mind, really waiting to like show up and be acted upon. So this really interesting thing happens for the fearful avoidant. They get in a reconciliation phase of a relationship, they get afraid of being abandoned or rejected, and they can push off and deactivate if they feel like that's coming. And they get afraid of being hurt and they get afraid of being trapped. So they get it's like they don't want to move towards, but they don't want to move away. They get afraid of the abandonment or the loss as well, but they also get super afraid of the commitment and being hurt again and maybe trust being broken again or whatever it might be. Even if it's not like in a direct way, even just like indirect trust being broken. And so you'll get this dynamic where the fearful avoidant, the best thing that you can do is move very slowly and consistently in a way that you would almost approach a DA, but you would want to move like a little step at a time, a little step at a time, and then kind of hold back and give space. And what that space is doing is it's giving the fearful avoidant a moment to like feel the connection and then not feel a sense of pressure or like stress around it. And the fearful avoidant really needs that to breathe and kind of consider their feelings and let some of their fears down slowly over time. Anything that's too strong in either direction, pulling away too much, or um, coming on too strong, both of those things will polarize the fearful avoidant into one of their sides of their attachment style because they sort of technically have the anxious and the avoidant side. And that will usually create chaos in the relationship dynamic. Now, if you're the anxious preoccupied and you're listening to this, you have to make really certain that you also do not like run around contorting yourself into like who you think you should be and doing everything you can in a way that abandons yourself. One of the necessary things for any form of reconciliation is for both parties to not just have a conversation about what went wrong, but to learn and to consider what your boundaries and needs are going back into a dynamic again. So you're not repeating old patterns and so that you're clear about what you want the outcome to be. So if you see the relationship not working, and you're not wasting any more time in something that's not right for you. So this is something that both sides have to do. You both have to be like, what are my boundaries? What are my needs? And how can I communicate these things? And then both of you have to sit down and be like, what were our trigger patterns? A really important thing, and I don't think I've covered it on this channel, but it's in the school a lot, is we all have our primary and secondary trigger patterns. We have things that we do that we get triggered by, and then the way we react to that trigger or the trigger itself then triggers the other person, and it goes around in a loop. And we usually have one, if not two of these. I call these our primary and secondary trigger patterns, main ones. Sometimes we can have a few. And an example of this could be like if I have a core wound that says I am unheard, and if somebody I'm in a relationship with has a core wound that says I'm going to be abandoned, maybe every time, this is actually based off of a real life experience from a set of clients I had years back. What happens is like one person will go to the other person and be like, hey, and try to talk about a problem. And then the other person, and this person in the instance had severe abandonment trauma in their childhood. Every time this person's wife would try to talk about the trauma, he would be like, it's fine, just leave. And he was more DA and he would shut down thinking he was going to be left because there was a criticism and anything meant abandonment. And so then what would happen is she would feel more unheard because he would shut her out and shut down and pull away and feel afraid and hurt. And then she would feel more unheard. So then she'd become critical. And then he would think even more that he's going to be abandoned. And they would go in this loop, right? And we all have those in our relationships, not just our romantic relationships, our friendships, our family relationships, anybody we're really challenged by, even people in the office, a boss that maybe you find yourself getting triggered by. There's usually that dynamic at play on some subtle level. So you have to identify those things if you're going to reconcile. And the how to repair any relationship goes into that in so much depth. But you have to be able to identify those things and like break them up and figure out what to do with them. And as you do that, you get the opportunity to really expand and really move through things. And as you do the reprogramming around that and you communicate differently about that, things can start to shift. So for FAs and AAs, we'll often see things like a fearful avoidant feeling unworthy or ashamed, and the anxious preoccupied when they feel like they're not getting enough attention. They can sometimes be critical, and that can definitely trigger a fearful avoidant. Another big one is the core wound, I am bad, for a fearful avoidant. And if the anxious preoccupied is not feeling like they're getting their needs met, sometimes they can become a little bit upset, and then the fearful avoidant feels really guilty, and then they feel like the anxious is guilting them, even though the anxious is just trying to express their emotions. And then the fearful avoidant can really pull back from that. I mean, there's so many versions of this, honestly, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but try to take some time and sit with it and identify what your major patterns are. Okay. So far we have, it's really important to move at a comfortable pace. It's very important to communicate your needs. It's very important to actually resolve past conflicts. And this means like having a sit down about what wasn't working. It's very important to identify your primary trigger patterns and break through some of those, and have conversations about them. Like, hey, I noticed we get in this loop and this is what it looks like. And what can we both do to make an effort next time going into the future so that this doesn't have to continuously happen on autopilot? And then I would say from the anxious side, often the anxious, if you're the fearful avoidant on the side of this, what you may not realize is that even though you may feel pressured at times, if that it does show up or happen for you, The anxious, preoccupied individual, when they get a lot of reinforcement, when they get like a lot of, um, just like reassurance, hey, I'm interested. I might need to move a little bit slowly, but I'm very interested. When they get that, like those words of affirmation, when they get their needs met for reassurance and they can feel safe about the connection, they can be very patient and very calm when they're not activated, and they become very empathetic and caring. And so those are also very important steps to be able to take. So, those are some major points at a high level. Obviously, there's so much more. And then as you start to see momentum building in the dynamic, you really want to enter into the rebonding phase. Again, I talk about that a lot inside the course, and there's like a lot to unpack here. There's so much. But these are things like learning to identify one another's needs and using the steps to do so. Learning to communicate about your fears and vulnerabilities and create strategies around them, learning to bond in each other's love languages, learning about like what were the things that brought us close at the beginning and sort of bringing those things back online. If it was that you used to laugh a lot, go on adventures, try new things, whatever it might be, trying to bring those things back into the dynamic again. And so there's lots to sort of unpack in here, but hopefully from all of this really quick information in a shorter video, you have the opportunity to sort of see what stands out to you, what you may or may not be doing. And of course, if you want to do a deep dive, you can always check out the free 7-day trial inside the school. Very limited time thing. And that's it for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.